What's up, Auburn? Pastor Crespo here once again with Pastor Dustin Hall of the Try Jesus podcast. Thank you for being a part of the Try Jesus family. We are
Mhm.
here. By the way, hi, Pastor Hall. How are you?
Hey,
We're
good.
in we're in different locations. You know how life gets. We get busy. We couldn't do it right from our main studio, but
Mhm.
thank God for technology, right?
Absolutely. Summer's leaving. I'm a little mad about that. It's getting cold. I don't like that.
Oh, I'm kind of looking forward to hoodie weather. This is nice, man.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I think this is an unpopular opinion, but I think fall in New York is overrated.
Y- I saw you put that post on Facebook. I was going to ask you about that. You really like to poke the hornet's nest, don't you? This is beautiful
Well,
up here. How could you say that?
listen, it's not that it's not beautiful. It is. Beautiful days are really nice, but here's the problem. In New York, there's too few of them in the fall, and winter comes too fast. So there's a lot of rain and it gets cold and it's yuck in the fall. The beautiful days are gorgeous, but there's not enough of them. And then winter's like right on the heels. So, fall needs to prove me wrong here. I need to see multiple nice days, warm days to have my faith in fall restored.
Look, to the Try Jesus family in Auburn, guys, we need to start praying for Pastor Dustin. Pray that he'll get what he wishes for, and that he will see when the leaves start falling and changing color, and it's beautiful. Even if it only lasts for a couple of days. I mean, it's. I mean, it's beautiful. I don't know. I'm gonna pray for you, Dustin.
Why do we all rejoice in the death of leaves?
Th- You see, well, you know what? You know what? I think that's probably fits in just perfect with the question that we're going to be covering today. If you are new to the Try Jesus podcast, we were taking questions at the back to school event at the Booker T. Washington Community Center, where there was teacher giveaway baskets that Pastor Hall was handing out to teachers. We have 150, 160 teachers. We
Yeah.
were there when they were giving away backpacks to the kids, so we were able to at least be a part of that when the community center did that. Over 400 children. I mean, in total, maybe 1,000 people when you include families.
Hmm.
Bunches of people were there. We asked this question, and this is what led to the question that we're going to bring for Pastor Hall. Is this: if you could ask God one question, what would that question be? And so when we were there, Pastor Dustin, a mother came through and she had a question. I'm going to play it for you and let's get into it. You ready?
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Tell me your name first.
Kaylee Redden.
Kaylee? Okay, what's your question?
You wanted to know why about God. I said why he hurts people the way he does.
Okay, excellent question. That was a short, I'm not going to say short but sweet. That was a short but powerful question.
Hmm.
Um, I think that Kaylee is probably well. I'm going to let you answer the question, but your demeanor kind of makes me, you kind of were a little bit negative on fall here, so it kind of there's some things going on here that may tie together. But Pastor Hall, what do you have to share with Kaylee today in response to the question? Why does God hurt people the way that He does?
Well, I don't know Kaylee, but I get the sense from her question that probably something specific is in her mind or going on in her life. And so the first thing I want to say to her is, I'm sorry, whatever you're going through. I'm going to add you to my prayer list. Um, it seems really specific. And, I think many of us, most of us, maybe all of us ask that same question. God, if you're so good, how can such bad things be happening to me? And it's a natural question. Even some of the people in the Bible ask that question. And I think it's a question that God doesn't mind working with us on and answering over time in our circumstances.
I, I
And
can you
so,
just repeat that real quick, because I sometimes I think people, if they're not, you, it's just like almost like having these golden nuggets just slip through their fingers. What did you say about God? God's comfortable with these type of questions.
Yeah, God's not threatened when we say, God, what I'm going through doesn't match up with who you're supposed to be or who I know you to be. Why? How can you let these things happen? I don't understand. What's going on? Job even, yelled at God at times and questioned God, and God answered his questions. And I've even had times in my life where things are so stressful or perplexing or hurtful that I've had arguments with God. And I think in these circumstances, it's really easy for us to stop talking to him because we think, oh, he doesn't care or he doesn't exist. And so we just stop talking to God, and that's the worst thing we can do. God would rather have us yell at him and scream at him and argue with him and shake our fist at him than to stop talking to him. So I guess my encouragement for Kaylee would be, don't stop talking to God. Don't stop asking him that question that you asked us,
Yeah.
because we can give you an intellectual answer here, but you need an experiential answer with Jesus himself, and he will come into your life and he'll help you navigate a hardship and grow to understand it eventually.
Yeah.
But on a bigger level, on a wider level, we are taught as humans that if there is a God, that means he's in control. And therefore, everything that happens, God is sort of like a puppet master up in heaven, orchestrating all of the world's events. So, therefore, everything that happens to me or all the suffering I'm going through, God is in charge of, and God is, in a way, doing to me.
But isn't
And
isn't
that's
that
a
tr-
really dangerous way to think.
but isn't that somewhat true though? I mean, how do you? I've had to deal with these questions as well. I'm asking partly knowing the answer. I don't want to be fake to our Try Jesus family here, but I mean, we believe that God is in charge. Is He's in control. We
Mm-hmm.
believe God knows the beginning from the end. And not only we believe, the Bible tells us this. So is it wrong to blame God when we believe He's sovereign? So
Mm-hmm.
how do you help someone who has something bad happen? And sometimes people go through some pretty bad stuff, and then they're being told by church that and this question is a deep question. We were joking around at the beginning, but this is kind of like, this is about as deep as it gets, because you're touching the human pain, the human experience. But how do you help, say, someone like Kaylee? What do you say to her? Is it wrong for her to blame God when bad things happen, when we believe He's in charge?
Yeah. So, and I would encourage people, we've done a couple other episodes on a topic like this, a longer one called The Origin of Evil,
Mm-hmm.
and another one called Why Does God Still Allow Evil? And I would encourage people to watch that, because we're not going to be able to answer all the ins and outs of this question in this shorter episode.
Right.
But so that's a valuable listen. But I'll say this: the I believe there's an enemy, that Satan, who wants to ruin our lives and get us to blame God for it. So that's been his task. He's been really successful in it throughout the generations of Earth's history.
Yeah.
He has been really successful in making a mess out of God's perfect creation, and then getting us to look at God and say, why did you do this?
Hmm.
When God didn't do it at all. It's not God's fault. And so we need to recognize that the world is a mess, and maybe we're suffering in the moment, not because of God's will, but because of the evil that exists in the world and the one who wants to destroy us. And here's the thing: it would be appropriate for us to blame God if he didn't have some rescue plan. So for
Uh,
God to put us into this world of suffering and just leave us here without any plan to get us out or be with us in it, he would be a horrible God. But no suffering, no agony, no pain, no trauma, no abuse comes from God. It exists because there's an enemy who wants to destroy us
Right.
and get the whole world to blame God for the destruction. But Jesus is the rescue plan, and God promises to be with us in our suffering and give us a way out. Give us a way out, whether that's in today, a way out, or in the future, in a way out, or ultimately when he comes again to rescue us and get us out of here.
Right.
But we were born into a fallen, sinful world that was full of hardship. And it would not be fair. And it would be fair for us to blame God and shake our fist at him and say, God, how could you do this to me, if it weren't for the fact that he has made a way for us to get out of that suffering?
Right. So, I mean, respectfully to Kaylee, that her blame is misplaced.
It is.
She's placing blame
It is.
on God when it's not. He's not responsible.
Mm-hmm.
The if I liken getting mad at your parents, they're patient with you. They're trying for you to make good choices. They give you the freedom because that's how you learn. But then you make bad choices, and then you actually blame your parents
Yeah.
for the bad choices.
Well, and I'll say this too. People will blame God for suffering, but they never blame Jesus for suffering, because they think they we've sort of, without maybe even understanding it or learning it at some point, it's almost like Jesus has one kind of character, he's one way, and God the Father's another way. You never hear people say, why did Jesus do this to me? Because what they see in Jesus is merciful and kind and caring and healing and with us in
Wow.
our hardships. And what we need to remember is that Jesus said, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can't picture Jesus doing bad things to you, then God isn't doing bad things to you. So if your picture of God the Father isn't consistent with how you see Jesus, you're thinking about God the Father the wrong way.
Yeah, I heard a preacher one time say this, and it stuck with me. He said he was approached by someone after a sermon, and the person was kind of in the same mindset. God is bad. He's evil. He's a coward. And the pastor said, "Well, why do you call God a coward?" He said, "Because he sent his son to die when he should have done it himself. What father would do that to their child?" So he was saying, because God did that, he's a coward. And the pastor looked at him and he said, "Let me ask you a question. What would hurt you more? You dying or your child dying?" God gave up, you could say, he hurt more in order to save you and I. And when I heard him say that, I never thought about that before.
Yeah, that's powerful stuff.
That
And the
that
thing about that is, it was through that suffering that God provided the rescue plan to get us out of this hurtful world.
Yeah.
And on top of that, not only did God come down in the form of his son to give us a way out, he also suffered all the stuff that we suffer. So God knows exactly what Kaylee's going through. God knows exactly what you and I are going through because he lived it.
Yeah.
He experienced it. So our cries to him do not fall on deaf ears, because he knows exactly what we're going through.
Yeah.
So, but there's some other things that we kind of need to bring into this. And I have 5 quick little things here that I think are worth mentioning. So the first one is, just because God knows something is going to happen doesn't mean that he makes it happen. So that's important to know, because most people believe that God has foreknowledge. He knows all things. He knows what's going to happen. But that doesn't mean that he controls our free will and the free will of other people. If he was controlling our free will, we wouldn't really have the ability to choose. So God may know something's coming, but he doesn't make that thing happen. God knew Adam and Eve were going to eat the fruit, but he didn't make them eat the fruit. God knew whatever event happened in your life that caused you suffering, but he didn't make that thing happen. And so that's a really important distinction to understand. We are living in a world where people have free will. And if there is suffering in your life, there's a really good chance that someone has made a choice to put you through that suffering, or to not even think about you at all and be selfish. And Jesus experienced that himself and has given us a way to have victory over the selfishness of other people, because he was victorious over the selfishness of other people. So that's the first thing.
Yeah.
The second thing is, it is never, with a capital N, never God's plan to hurt or destroy us. You know, I hate the expression when somebody dies, we say something like, God couldn't wait another day in heaven without our loved one there. That's why he took them. Listen, God doesn't take anyone from us. He wouldn't put us through that. What takes us is cancer and car accidents and old age and murder and evil. That's what takes people from us.
Yeah.
But yet he gives us the hope of eternal life and a reunion with the people that we lose. Again, a rescue plan beyond the circumstances and the selfishness and the evil of this world. So, again, God is not the author of suffering. God is not the author of evil. So never put that on God when we're hurting. It's not God that's doing it. It's other circumstances, but yet he gives us a way, makes a way to make it better in the long run on our behalf.
Yeah, you mentioned all those things, cancer and crime and murder, all these things. One word sums that up, all of it. It's the word sin.
Yes.
That's responsible for all that stuff. Wow, that's pretty powerful.
And God is not the author of sin.
That's right.
God didn't create sin.
So, well,
okay,
what else
so
do you have for Kaylee?
Yeah, the number three, we'll move through these quickly. Number 3 is, you know, if we're honest, and I don't know if this is Kaylee's situation, but I'm just talking in general terms now. Probably about 80% of the pain that we experience in this life, we did it to ourselves.
Yeah.
God, why am I in debt? Well, why'd you buy the new car?
Right.
You know, God, why? And so we have to realize that any good parent sometimes, and I use the word sometimes because that's true, God does protect us from ourselves many times.
Yeah.
But any good parent, at least occasionally, has to allow their children to suffer the consequences of their choices so they won't continue to make the same mistakes over and over again. God wouldn't be a good father if he allowed us to continue to mess up and never allow us to suffer the consequences for our choices. So we need to let him guide our thoughts and our decision making so that we don't continue to put ourselves in a position to experience pain that we bring on ourselves. So that's important. Number 4, God does not cause all things to happen, but he will turn every mess into a blessing if we are patient. In a previous episode, we quoted Romans 8. All things work together for good for those that love God and are called according to his purpose. So you may have made the mess. Someone else may have made a mess in your life. The devil may have come in and attacked you and made a mess. God can take the devil's plans, turn them on their head, and end up making them a blessing. We have to look for it and believe that that's true.
Once you learn that lesson, you know, it makes living life a lot easier because you're always looking for that hope. You're always looking for God to show you something, to do something. Things don't look good right now, but eventually, well, not eventually, many times God shows you why he allowed this to happen because he needed something else to happen.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yep. Absolutely. And so the last thing is, as we said earlier, John 14:9 says, Jesus says, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. So if the feelings that you're having about God the Father don't correspond to the way that you feel about Jesus, you need to start thinking of Jesus as God and realize that they're one.
Hmm.
So the will, the desire, the hope, the joy, the salvation, the forgiveness, the freedom that comes with Jesus is
Yeah.
actually God's heart for us too. So we might sometimes shake our fist at God the Father, and I've done this very thing, but then a picture of Jesus comes up in my mind, and I go, "But that's who you are, God." And sometimes that does cause some dissonance in our
Yeah.
minds because we ask the question, God, who I know you to be in Jesus, does not match up to what I'm going through in my life. And it's in those moments where it's okay to ask those questions. God,
Yeah.
make this make sense. Show me, give me comfort, give me peace, give me hope, because who I know you to be is not what I feel right now. And that is actually a really healthy, important conversation to have with God when we're going through suffering. Because we're not losing our faith by saying that. We're
Right.
actually affirming our faith in Jesus. We're saying, God, I know who you are. I know who you are. But it doesn't seem like my circumstances and my life conditions are matching up to who I know you are. So remind me and show me again who you really are.
Wow. Well, I mean, I think, Kaylee, if you're listening, with all due respect, the question, of course, comes from a place of probably some pain, but you need to consider that you're blaming the wrong person, right?
Yes.
And rather than being angry with God, maybe as Dustin is saying, maybe you need to be talking to God. Tell him
Mm-hmm.
you're upset. Tell him you're angry. Tell him you don't understand. I know my experience in my life. There have been times that I've been angry and have had what I'll call the audacity to be angry with God after all the things He's done in my life. For me to still be angry sometimes and act entitled is kind of crazy. But I know that I've actually grown. It is in those times where I've put my emotions and my feelings before God. That's
Mm-hmm.
when I've actually grown and have experienced some things that have just been, memorable as in terms of a walk with the Lord. So,
Yep.
um, Dustin, is there anything else you want to share with Kaylee in terms of an answer before we wrap up?
Hey, Kaylee, and for others that have questions about life, we'd love to hear from you. Send in your questions at tryjesusauburn.com or on any of our social media platforms. But also, look, if you have prayer requests, reach out too, because we can help pray you through these situations.
Amen.
But we're trying to connect with people that want to have a journey with the Lord. So, anybody that's out there that has these questions or needs encouragement or a prayer or pat on the shoulder or free ice cream because we're planning an ice cream outing soon, we want you to be with us. You want to come and hang out so we can all grow closer to Jesus together and support each other in this walk.
All right. Well, Dustin, thank you. Thank you, Try Jesus family. We'll see you guys next time.